Don Drummond is a former chief economist for TD Bank and former senior official at Finance Canada. Hi, Mr. Drummond. Good to see you as always. Thank you very much for making the time.
You're welcome.
We are starting to get a little bit of data from Statistics Canada today, particularly where GDP is concerned, but against the greater backdrop of tariffs and how they might be impacting things. It looks like, at least according to Statistics Canada, there was a little bit of a rush to try and get ahead of the imposition of them.
Yeah, that might be the last set of good numbers we see for a while. Of course, the debate is, will these tariffs push us into a recession? We don't know that, but clearly the numbers are going to be weaker. We also have to get used to, for a couple of years, it seemed very low growth numbers in Canada, simply because we're ratcheting down to way lower immigration numbers. Our population was increasing by over 3% a year for several years, and it's just going to go down to a fraction of that. And if we look at the economic outlook that was in the April monetary policy report from the Bank of Canada, they have, even if there's not a recession, they have hardly any growth for a while. So 2.2% for the first quarter may be the best thing we see for a while.
So do you think, in your estimation, based on what you're seeing, that it will be an outlier?
I think so, but one of the things that bothers me in the debate about the tariffs, will it push in a recession? I said, let's keep our eye on the ball here. That's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem could be a permanent loss of income and output in Canada. If we lost substantial part of our manufacturing sector and in other sectors because they're reliant upon sales to the United States, it's not just we're going to go down and come back the way we tend to do in recessions. This could be a much weaker economic situation for Canada for a very long period of time.
What is your sense of, I guess, the degree to which the tariffs will impact us if they are largely removed? And I ask because there's all this conversation here in Ottawa about the possibility of a deal, but the uncertainty around Donald Trump and the degree to which he likes tariffs and thinks they're a good instrument of trade policy, I don't know if that necessarily goes away, even if we have something, because we already have a deal in place right now and it didn't really end up making a difference. Do you think that the uncertainty around all of this will ever be diffused?
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say those negative thoughts about it, because people rush in, let's renegotiate it. I said, well, we got a deal. He signed it in the first term. He's trampled all over it. He changes his mind every single day. Despite all the inconsistencies, he's been clear on one thing. If you want to access the U.S. consumer, you have to produce in the United States. I don't think he's going to waver from that. That is a big threat to Canada. The preposition when we went to free trade first with the United States, then North America, is you can access the U.S. market from anywhere in North America. I think that's broken, even if we don't get tariffs. And I think it'd be naive to assume that this is all going to disappear and all life is going to be fine again. He's going to keep throwing chaos and obstacles. He doesn't care about the Canadian economy whatsoever. He's made it crystal clear he sees no point in Canada producing any cars, seemingly even for Canadians to buy. He doesn't want any of that and doesn't want to see Canada produce other things. So this isn't going to go anytime soon. We're going to have to reinvent our economy. It made sense to make this unique relationship with the United States. It's right there. They're very wealthy, but it's not the reliable partner we thought. And we're starting with a pretty weak position, weak business investment, weak productivity. We don't have free trade agreements around the world, so we got a lot of work to do.
Do you think there will be sectoral implications to what you just described? And I'm thinking, for example, in particular of the auto sector. I read this week that the CEO of GM was saying that she supports Donald Trump's tariffs. There's a lot of concern about investment fleeing to the United States just because of the climate. Are there going to be certain sectors hit particularly hard?
One of the management consulting companies in Canada did a survey at the end of January, so that was really in the first few hours of the tariff threat. And it came back, almost half of Canadian large businesses said they were already contemplating pulling back investment in Canada and increasing investment, even in the extreme, moving all their production out of Canada and the United States. And really, can you blame them? If you have a large production presence in Canada, but your main consumers in the United States, it's pretty clear these sets of tariffs, legal or not illegal or something else, the current U.S. administration doesn't want to see them come through Canada, and that's a threat, and you have to take that into consideration. If you're a European or Southeast Asian company, and again, you need access to the U.S. market, are you going to be as keen to locate in Canada as you were before? I think not, and this is where I'm 100% with you. It's not just the reality of the tariffs, it's the threat of it, and it's the attitude behind it. They're deeply concerning for Canada.
So is there a role for government in trying to incentivize the opposite from happening?
Oh, there's a huge role. I've been singing this song for 30 years. We have to address our economic weaknesses. We have to do something about our lackluster productivity performance. We have to do something about our very low business investment. We have to do something to better employ our highly skilled people that we do. Now the urgency is that much greater. We have to build different relationships, and it's not easy. Everyone will say, "Well, go trade more with China," but you do one thing they don't like, and all of a sudden they're claiming that there's contamination in your wheat exports, etc. It's not easy to build those relationships, and particularly not easy to build new relationships when we're not terribly competitive to start. So we dramatically need to increase the competitive. We need to have much more of an east-west electricity trade. Obviously, how silly it is to have the internal trade barriers. We got to get rid of that. There's a long list of things we got to do, which maybe a year or 2 years ago, maybe somebody contemplated doing in the next 10 or 20 years. We got to do them over the next 1 or 2 years now.
You mentioned you've been saying it for 30 years. In those 30 years, have you seen the political will at the federal and provincial levels expressed in the same way that you're seeing it now?
Well, I will give credit to governments. Starting in the mid-1990s, I thought a lot of our problems tended to come from high and variable inflation. Until inflation reemerged in 2021, we had a long period of time, 30 years of inflation staying right at around 2%. And we got the benefits from it. Our interest rates many times were actually even lower than U.S. interest rates that were higher before. We had very high debt. Remember, in the mid-1990s, our federal-only debt-to-GDP ratio was about 70%, 30 cents of every revenue dollar people shipped off to Ottawa got wasted paying interest on public debt. We got that debt burden down to 30%. We got only 10 cents of the revenue going. So we did have a lot of improvements in our public policy. We got rid of the really ill-advised capital tax. You want business investment, why in the world would we tax it? We got rid of that. We lowered corporate income tax rates. So we did a lot of things that were right. Maybe things would have been even worse if we hadn't done it, but it didn't do the trick. Our productivity growth rate stayed from 2000 to 2019 about 1% a year, and it's got even weaker since that. So now we have to do even more things.
So just one quick follow-up on that. If the federal government came to you right now, if the Prime Minister turned to you and said, what's the one thing I need to do to address the issue you just laid out? Like the main thing, obviously it's a lot of things, but the first thing, what should I do?
Well, they've done the first thing, and I'll give them credit, and both the Conservatives and the Liberals did this in the election platform. It's their traditional thing. If you got a problem, the first thing is to recognize you got a problem, admit you got a problem, say you're going to deal with it. And they've done that. And that's not a light doing, because as you were suggesting, a long time governments weren't acknowledging we got that problem. Now we need a fulsome plan, and it can't be just laid down unilaterally by the federal government. We're talking about accelerating the pace of major projects. Most of those are in the hands of the provinces. The federal government can't impose that. So that's the key point. How do we get a collaboration across Canada? Surprisingly, we don't get it among the provinces. They have their Council of Federation meetings, but they don't tend to do things cooperatively. Why haven't they solved the interprovincial barriers? They're their creation. They should be solving themselves. We're going to get more houses. We hear the federal government say we're going to do that. We hear the province and municipalities. Why can't we get that together? We need to, for the first time in a very long time, this will be my one thing, figure out a way that all the levels of government could work, because we've got a common target, totally reinventing the Canadian economy for the betterment of all Canadians. Now they need to work together on that.
Maybe they'll do that tomorrow at their big meeting. Thanks so much, Mr. Drummond. Appreciate the insights.
Okay, bye.